Ask the jury to come in, please, Sheriff. Thank you. I'm sure he has. All right, we're back in session. The jurors are again present. They're all present. I believe we were hearing the testimony of Detective Salmon. You may continue.
Thank you. Detective, before we left off, we looked at some video and a receipt from the Apple Store from Thursday night, July 14th. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Why did you seize that Apple Store receipt? Why was July 14th evening important to you?
Any activity at the time that Laura Akerson became missing and thereafter was significant to the investigation.
And were you aware at that time of how many vehicles Amanda and Grant Hayes owned?
I understood that they owned one vehicle.
One vehicle between them?
Yes, sir.
And we looked at some pictures of that apartment. Are you also aware that a handwritten note was found in that apartment?
Yes.
Or can I publish State's Exhibit 73?
You may.
I'm clerk, Peter. Detective, we're looking at State's Exhibit 73 in this picture. I handed you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 77. Could you look at that document?
Yes, sir. Okay.
And if you can look inside there, is that a note that has what appears to be two different handwritings on there?
Yes, it is.
And was that note found inside that apartment?
Yes, it was.
And specifically, was that found in this room that we're looking at?
Yes, it was in the counter area of that divide between the dining room and the kitchen.
And was that item seized and given to the lead detective, Detective Falk?
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, this time I move to enter State's Exhibit 77.
That'll be received.
Detective, could you read that document and indicate how it's dated?
Yes, I can. The document is dated initially 6/13/11. The 6 is marked through and the number 7, and then it looks like a LA signature next to that. So 6 is marked through with the date 7/13/11 now showing on the document. And it reads, I, Laura J. Akerson, for the sum of $25,000, agree not to pursue custody of the 2 minor children, Grant and Gentle Hayes. I am not surrendering parental rights, but I do consent to leaving them in the sole custody of their father for now. Further, I agree to drop all pending litigation against their father in the Lenoir County Family Court. And in another handwriting that appears very different than that statement reads, by notifying counsel John Sargent of our arrangement, less the monetary compensation, I understand that I will be able to see my kids when I want to at the discretion of their father, dated, or correction, signed Laura Akerson, and again with the date 6 marked through 7/13/11 with the letters LA next to the date. Correction.
That date is only on there in one place, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that date says June 13th of 2011, and the 6 is crossed out in place of the 7.
That's correct.
And to summarize that note, it says that Laura Akerson, in exchange for $25,000, is agreeing to give up custody of her children and drop the custody suit.
That's correct.
Thank you. you retrieved that node and continue your investigation, did you have occasion to talk to Lauren Harris?
I did.
And that was a person that worked at Monkey Joe's.
That's correct.
And did you speak to some other friends of Laura Ackerson?
I did.
Did you speak to Heidi Shoemaker?
I did.
And did you speak to Barbara Petty?
I did.
And did you also acquire some financial records?
I did.
On that Friday, July 22nd, did you follow up with some of those financial institutions?
Yes, I did.
And the next week, on the 25th, which I guess was that Monday of the following week, did you execute a search warrant?
I did.
And what was that search warrant for?
The search warrant was to gather DNA from the two surviving children, Grant Hayes IV and Gentle Hayes.
And at that point, what was the point of getting DNA from Grant IV and Gentle Hayes?
There were body parts that had been located at this time in Texas. The identifying features as far as head and skull had not been located, so we were moving towards doing a DNA match of those remains with the surviving children.
And did you get those swabs from the children?
Yes.
On July 26th, did you conduct some further investigation in this case?
I do not indicate I concluded on the 25th.
Okay. At some point, did you go to 3810 Doyacope Road?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
About some blood in a stairwell?
That's correct, on the 26th.
And could you just tell the jury about what happened?
We had received a call that there was blood located in a stairwell of an apartment complex close to the crime scene location, and we conducted an investigation of that blood to determine what the source of it was and if it was related or not related to the investigation we were pursuing.
And what did you find out about that blood trail?
There was an individual at that location who lived there who had cut his hand several days prior, and he was in a bottom floor apartment. He had cut his hand in his car on the upper level, and it bled and dropped blood from the upper location to the bottom apartment location. And that blood trail was consistent with his statement and with other witnesses' statements.
Okay. And did CCBI come out to take pictures of that?
They did.
And ultimately, after getting these statements, did you make a conclusion of whether that was relevant at all to this case?
Yes.
And what was that?
That it did not appear to be related to the death of Laura Ackerson.
But do you still go out and document and make sure the pictures are taken?
Yes.
And why is that?
Just for complete thorough follow-up, we did blood sampling. We also got a consent of the blood source so we can do an analysis if needed to be done.
Why was getting financial records important to you?
It's part of an investigation. It really does give us a trail if the victim was using her cards, if somebody else was using their cards, if suspects in this case, places they have gone, items they had purchased during the course of this investigation, both before, during, and after the investigation, become very important.
And with regard to Laura Ackerson's financial information, did you find that any of her cards or any of her accounts had been accessed after the time that you believe that she had died?
I did not.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Gaskins, do you have questions?
Yes, thank you, Your
All
Honor.
right.
Good afternoon, Detective Brown.
Good afternoon.
One of the first things that you did, I take it, in this, when you became a part of this investigation, was go to the apartment complex where Laura's Ford Focus had been found.
That's correct.
And did you participate in any way of the search of the vehicle?
No, I did not.
You mentioned that you were able to determine that both Grant and Laura Hayes had previously rented. Grant Hayes and Laura Ackerson had previously rented an apartment in that apartment complex in 2009.
Yes,
So clearly Grant Hayes was familiar with that complex.
that's correct.
Now, when you talked about doing a a a canvas of the neighborhood.
Yes,
And what that involves is literally going to each house, each apartment in the area to try to determine, is there anyone here who has seen anything? Is there anyone here who's heard anything? You're trying to locate witnesses, right?
that's correct.
And how many people would have participated in the canvas of the area where the car was found?
During the time that I was involved in the search, there were 5 detectives total from my unit that were involved in that canvas during the time that we canvassed.
And I take it that you found no one over there who had seen anything, or heard anything, or knew anything about the vehicle being parked there?
Correct.
And did you talk to the individual who owned the car that was parked next to the four post?
I did not.
Do you know if anyone else talked to that person?
I'm not aware of anyone identifying the car parked next to it, and I know I did not have that conversation, so I'm not sure.
Now, when you're, did you do anything else in the way of investigating over there at the apartment complex where the car was located?
The only other activity that I was engaged in is there were several storage units that occupants that rented apartments there could rent, and I was able to search several of those that were vacant just to make sure there was nothing located in any of those. And that information, again, was forwarded to Detective Falk and that team.
And nothing was found in any of those storage units?
No.
Now, when your investigation switched across the street to the Woodville Glen apartment, did you also conduct a canvass of the people that live in the neighborhood?
I did not. I was called to engage in a search only. I was not asked to do a canvass and did not participate in a canvass.
Do you know who did participate in that canvass?
No, I do not.
You were, let me ask you this first. Before you execute the search warrant on the apartment, what do you do to protect the crime scene? If that's a crime scene, what do you do to protect it from being contaminated?
Prior to entry into a crime scene, is that what you're asking? Prior to the execution, which is the knock at the door, announcing that the Raleigh Police Department is at the door, and reading of a search warrant. Which I did not involve myself in the entry, but typically there's a initial entry to make sure there's no occupants for safety of those that are going to be searching. Once that has been established that it is a safe unit, it's secured, and CCBI typically is called at that point to come in and do an initial photographing of the scene so nothing's disturbed.
So the very first thing is that you do is to take photographs of this area so that you can document exactly how it appears later.
That's one of the first things that are done.
And then when you actually physically enter the premises, do you do anything to protect or to prevent the transfer of evidence from the outside to the inside?
We do, and every scene is different. In this case, we wore gloves. There was not the need for the booties and the footwear and the clothing gear. We wore gloves to prevent contamination in the scene.
Latex gloves.
Latex.
Now, did you become aware during the time that you were participating in this search that Amanda and Grant were making plans to move to Kinston that week?
I was not aware of that.
So no one mentioned that to you while you were conducting your search?
Objection, that assumes facts, not evidence.
It's the same, staying full.
I believe in one of the photographs that you showed the jury that there was a big box that was packaged in some way in the closet near the front door. Do you recall that?
A large box, it did appear that there were movement in the apartment as if things were boxed, at least in that front room area, things had been moved. But box, I'm not, at this point, I'm not recalling a specific box.
I think the number was 72. Do you have those in front of you?
I do, and 72 is going to be, oops, I'm sorry, 72 is that front entrance with the bleach stain, and there is something of cardboard in the front of that room. That could be a box. I'm not positive at this point.
Look at, I may not be, I may have not directed you to the right number. Look
That was 74, I'm sorry. I'm sorry?
Look at 73 and see if you see packet boxes in that.
In 73, there are, it looks like unused cardboard that would be, once expanded, would turn into packing boxes.
I think that's the one.
Okay.
Now, you were assigned to search that back room, which seemed to be more of a storage room than probably any other you could have had.
Yes,
That's where you found that Apple receipt,
yes.
right? That Apple receipt was for the purchase of an Apple adapter cord. I probably have one right here, if I can untie all the knots. Is this what Grant purchased?
I don't know what the purchase was, but it appeared to be an adapter cord for an Apple Mac computer.
That's what the receipt showed.
Yes, sir.
Now, were you aware that Grant had posted an Apple MacBook Pro on Craigslist for sale sometime prior to this day?
I was not aware of that.
When he purchased this adapter cord, he paid cash for it, didn't he?
I'd have to look at the receipt to see if I could. I don't have that.
I don't remember the numbers of these various books.
It does indicate cash on the receipt for $84.33.
Are you also aware that Grant actually did possess a credit card?
I was not aware of that at this time.
Did you see other receipts later where he purchased other items and used the credit card?
I did not.
Did you see receipts that were discovered later where he once again used cash?
I did not.
Is this the only receipt that you've seen in this investigation?
Yes, it is.
At the, we've been shown a video, well, of Grant while he was at the Apple store. And you recall that.
I do.
He was there with the two little boys.
Correct.
Was it significant to you how calm Grant was?
Yes.
While you were at the apartment, you indicated that there was located that agreement that had been handwritten
That's correct.
Did you find that yourself?
I did not.
Okay. Was it pointed out to you by one of the other officers?
Yes, it was.
Do you recall if during that search, you or any one of the other officers found a manual for a reciprocating skill saw?
I do not recall a manual being found.
Your Honor, I'd object this time and move to strike that the information that's contained in Mr. Gaskins' questions isn't evidence for the jury at this point.
Overruled.
You also indicated that you did a search of financial records.
That's correct.
Correct me if I misunderstood the extent of the search that you did. Were you looking only for the financial records for Laura Ackerson?
No, what I was tasked to do was to look for any financial records for Laura Ackerson, for Grant Hayes, or Amanda Hayes. And that was, I initiated the search warrant that allowed us to access Equifax and some other banking information, and that was the extent of what I did in the search of financial records. I just initiated that search.
Did you actually obtain records?
I did not.
You just started the process by which those records could ultimately end up in the hands of someone else, presumably to take the fall.
That's correct.
You're not in a position to identify any financial records that would ultimately.
No, I'm not.
Of the search that you participated in at the department.
7/20/11.
Were you aware that the Raleigh Police Department went back to the apartment on 2 separate occasions after you were there and conducted further searches?
Yes, I was.
Were you aware that a manual for a reciprocating skill saw was found in the apartment on the 3rd search?
I'm not aware of a manual being found at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
Briefly, Detective Salmon, you're asked about how calm Grant's demeanor was in that Apple Store video. Did you ever have an opportunity to look at Amanda's demeanor on July 14th?
I did not.
Did you attempt to see if there were any security cameras around those apartment complexes?
Yes, that was inquired at the office, and as far as I know, that where the vehicle was located, there was no security cameras. At least I'm not aware of any being located.
Okay, and so y'all were never able to recover any video from that apartment complex or the apartment complex where Amanda and Grant lived?
No.
Were you aware of if there was a canvas? You mentioned you were involved in the canvas of that northern apartment complex, the Camden Crest one. The one where Amanda and Grant the place where Amanda and Grant were living, that Woodfield Glen Apartments. Do you know if that was canvassed as well?
I'm almost positive it would have been canvassed. I was not involved in the canvass, so I can't identify who would have done that, but it would have been an impossibility that it would not have been canvassed.
So you're involved in just that one part of the canvass, but all you homicide detectives will work together to funnel information to Detective Falk.
That's correct.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, thank you, officer. Thank you. You may stand down and call your next witness.
They call Lauren Harris.
Okay,
Sure.
sure. Ms. Harris, come around and be sworn, please. If you remain standing, put your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand and face the clerk, please. The Bible should be right over there. Great.
sir.
Put your left hand on it, raise your right hand, please.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. If you'll scoot up real close to the mic and speak right into the mic, please. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Ma'am, could you state your name for the record?
Lauren Harris.
And did you know the victim in this case, Laura Ackerson?
Yes, sir.
And did you also know Grant Hayes?
Yes, sir.
And how did you come to meet Grant and Laura?
I met Grant several years ago. He was playing at a restaurant that I frequented. Shortly after that, I met his girlfriend, Laura.
Okay, and what restaurant was that?
Sinelli's at North Hills?
And do you still work at a restaurant?
No.
Where do you work at?
I work for a wine distributor.
Going back to when you knew...
Wine. Yes, ma'am.
Going back to when you knew Grant and Laura and they were in a relationship, do you remember what year that was?
I can't recall right offhand, no, sir.
Okay. Now back then, at some point, did you become aware that Laura was pregnant?
Yes.
And then, did you ever see them with the baby?
Yes.
Okay, and that was little Grant,
Mhm.
Grant before.
Yes.
At some point, did you become aware that Laura was pregnant with another child?
Yes.
Okay.
Gentle.
And then, did you continue to have a friend relationship with Laura and Grant?
For a couple years, they kind of went their separate ways, and I did the same. Then we reconnected several years ago when Grant and Jenna were both older.
Okay, and how did you reconnect with?
At the time, I was the general manager of a kids' place called Monkey Joe's, and Grant used to bring the boys up there.
And so, was there a time between when you knew Grant and Laura together and the time that you, I guess, re-met Grant when he came to Monkey Joe's?
Yes,
And do you recall how long that was in between those two time periods?
couple years.
Do you recall where you first ran back into Grant or Laura?
It wasn't Laura. I ran back into Grant, and I cannot remember exactly. It was somewhere probably downtown, seeing him perform.
And at that time, Grant performed and sang and played the guitar at
Yes.
different bars.
Yes.
At that point, did you tell him that you were working at Monkey Joe's?
Yes.
And could you describe for the jury what Monkey Joe's is?
It is a big warehouse of inflatable bounce houses.
And what were your responsibilities at Monkey Joe's then?
I was the general manager, so I wrote the schedule and maintained the safety of all the different bounce houses. I also hired and fired and ran kind of the whole show.
And back then, would Grant and the children come by Monkey Joe's?
Yes.
And did you charge him for coming into Monkey Joe's?
Never.
Okay. And was that because you were friends?
Yeah, because he was a friend of mine.
Did you ever see Laura come to Monkey Joe's?
I think she came one time, maybe twice.
Did you ever see Amanda Hayes? at
One
Monkey-
time.
Okay. And when Grant and, would you see Grant and Laura at Monkey Joe's?
If Laura was ever there, Grant was there also.
And when you saw them there, were they arguing with each other?
Not necessarily.
How often would Grant bring the children to Monkey Joe's?
Pretty much every day I worked, at least 3 or 4 days a week.
And would Amanda ever bring the children to Monkey Joe's?
Not alone, no sir.
Back, I guess, as the summer of 2011 started, would Grant still be bringing the children to Monkey Joe's?
Yes sir.
At some point, I guess in the spring or summer of 2011, did Grant leave town?
Yeah, Grant left to go to Hawaii. I believe it was the end of May, maybe middle to end of May.
Do you know why he went to Hawaii?
From my understanding, he was going to look for work.
And was that, when you say work, like gigs?
Yeah, gigs to play. Hmm.
And how is it that you knew he went to Hawaii?
Well, my now fiance was living there at the time, and he stayed with him.
Do you recall him coming back to North Carolina from Hawaii and seeing him again?
Yes.
And around that time, were you aware of whether his wife, Amanda Hayes, was pregnant?
Yeah, she was very pregnant, yeah.
Okay. And some point, did you learn that she had the baby?
Yes.
And when was that?
Beginning of June,
Would you talk to Grant on the phone?
often.
And what types of things would you talk about?
Really just about the kids. He would call and find out what time I was coming in the next day and what time he could bring them, or if he, somebody did something cute, he would text me a picture.
Okay, so Grant would text you pictures of the children or
Mhm.
videos as well?
Yep.
Do you recall what your phone number was back then?
I do.
And what was that?
919-889-5404.
Now, at some point when you're texting and communicating with Grant during, I guess, the months that lead up to July, were you aware that his phone number changed?
Yeah, he started calling and texting from a different number, which he told me was Amanda's phone.
Okay. And do you remember what that phone number was?
I don't know, sir.
Now, at some point, did you become aware that Laura Ackerson disappeared?
Yes.
At some point during that week, did Grant bring the children to Monkey Joe's?
I believe the Tuesday before she disappeared.
So Tuesday, July 12th, Grant brought the children to Monkey Joe's?
That would sound right. Mm-hmm.
Anything out of the ordinary happened that day?
Not that I know of.
On that Tuesday, did he contact you later that night?
I believe so. I believe he texted me again to find out my schedule for the next day.
Okay. And did you tell him what your schedule was?
Yes.
And did you know why, I guess by him texting you about what your schedule was for the next day, did you presume that he wanted to bring the kids by on that Wednesday?
Yes.
Did he say that anyone else was going to come that Wednesday to Monkey Joe's, the children?
No, sir.
And then the next day, did you hear from Grant?
I texted him 3/4 of the way through the day because I still hadn't seen him or the boys and hadn't heard anything from him.
Okay. And did he text you back?
He did.
And what was to the best of your recollection, what were those texts about?
Something along the lines of something had come up and they were busy or something like that, saying that they wouldn't be able to make it, but he'd get a hold of me the next day.
And then after that afternoon where y'all texted back and forth, do you recall when the next time was that you heard from him?
I don't. Not offhand.
At some point later that week, did you see the children again?
Yes.
And when did you see the children?
I want to say it was Thursday. So I did hear from Grant Thursday morning. He had said that he was going to, that someone else was going to be bringing the children.
Okay. And did someone bring the children by on that Thursday?
Yes, sir.
And who is that person?
Shay.
And who is Shay?
Amanda's daughter.
Okay. Had Shay ever brought the children to Monkey Joe's before?
Not that I recall.
Do you remember how long Shay was there that day?
A couple of hours.
And at some point, did she leave there?
She left to go get the boys something else to eat, so they didn't have to eat the junk food. From what she told me, she was going to go to Linwood, which is a restaurant down the street, and then she was going to come back with the boys.
And at some point that afternoon, did she leave?
Yes.
And do you recall, was that the afternoon of July 14th of 2011?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what time it was?
Right around lunchtime, probably between 12 and 1,
What time does Monkey Joe's close?
7 o'clock.
After you saw those children with Shay on July 14th, did you see them again?
I believe I did.
Okay, when was that?
A couple weeks later, maybe.
And at some point, did you call Grant in the weeks later?
I did.
And what did he say to you?
I talked to him maybe a week later, and he said that him and Amanda and the boys were in Kinston at his parents' house, and they were getting ready to go to a church for a candlelight vigil for Laura, because at that point she was missing still.
And when was that in relation to when Laura went missing?
Maybe a week later.
Okay, so July 20th is a week from Wednesday? Is that
That's probably about right, somewhere around there.
Did you hear anything in the background?
No,
It sounded like he was in a car.
it didn't sound like that. I couldn't be sure.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, questions?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Harris, were you and Grant friends?
We were, yes, sir.
You consider yourself to be friends? Did you ever talk to Grant about his relationship with Laura?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that.
When we reconnected, when the boys would be playing at Monkey Joe's, we would talk, and he talked about just the difficulty, their custody struggle, and keeping the boys and letting Laura have the boys, just the normal, single parent stuff.
He basically talked about custody.
Yes.
Issues, visitation issues, things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that Amanda was very much pregnant in early July of 2007.
Yes, sir.
That Grant had left to go to Hawaii just before the baby.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how long he stayed in Hawaii?
I can't be certain. I think it was around a week, maybe 10 days, but I don't remember.
Was your understanding that Amanda was back at the apartment looking after little Grant in general and the baby while Grant was in Hawaii?
Yes.
Let me just clarify something. I think you probably answered this, but I might have misunderstood. On that Wednesday, children had been at Monkey Joe's on Tuesday, July the 12th with Grant.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Had plans been made for him to return to Monkey Joe's with the boys on Wednesday the 13th?
Yes, sir.
What time were they supposed to be there?
We didn't ever set a time. It was just he would usually text me when he was on his way, so I could come out to the car and help get them in.
And so no specific time had ever been arranged.
No, sir.
But at some point, he texted you or called you and let you know that the plans weren't working out and that they weren't going back.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And Monkey Joe's closes at 7.
Yes, sir.
Did you work right up until 7 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
Wednesday?
Yes, sir.
Did you hear from Grant again that day?
Not that I recall. No, sir.
When, I believe you indicated that one or two occasions that Laura brought the children to Monkey Joe's by herself.
No, Grant brought and she met them there.
The two of them would be there together.
Yes, sir.
You indicated you had met Amanda only one time.
I believe that's correct. Yes, sir.
That's all.
Yes.
Briefly, Ms. Harris, do you remember specifically the times that you called and texted Grant in between July 12th and July 13th? Do you remember the specific times?
I think the Wednesday was in the afternoon, maybe around 4 or 5, probably because I was trying to start my closing stuff.
Previously, did you testify in a hearing about this case?
I did.
Okay. Would looking at that transcript of your testimony help refresh your memory? of
Yeah, absolutely.
our coverage?
You may.
Ms. Harris, I hand you what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit 5:50. Do you recall when the first time was that you were called by Grant Hayes on July 12th?
It looks like 11:59 a.m.
And then were you called by Grant Hayes 2 other times that day?
Yes, at 1:07 and 1:18
And
p.m.
looking at your testimony from the previous hearing, do you recall that those phone calls were pretty short?
Yeah, it looks like one was 1 minute and 34 seconds.
And that was the one at 1:07 p.m.?
Yes.
And then you also texted the defendant on the afternoon of July 12th?
Yes.
And one of those texts was at 12:14 p.m.?
Yes.
And then he texted you back at 1:15 p.m.?
Yes.
And then y'all responded back and forth that afternoon? On
That's
July
correct.
12th? Okay. And then that evening of July 12th, that Tuesday, July 12th, did he text you at 10:18 p.m.?
He did.
And then did you respond at 10:21 p.m.?
I did.
And then he responded back to you, and you responded back to him at 10:25 p.m.?
That's correct.
And do you recall what was the nature of that exchange of text that Tuesday evening?
How are the boys? Are they coming tomorrow? What time do you think you guys are going to stop by?
Okay. And so he had mentioned the boys coming by Monkey Joe's that next day of July 13th.
That's correct.
And then the next day, did you text him at 4:13 p.m.?
Yes, sir.
And why was that?
Probably to say you guys haven't come yet.
Okay.
I was wondering where you were.
And then did he respond to you back at 4:17 p.m.?
Yes.
And then did you respond to that at 4:19?
Yes.
And what was if you remember, what was the circumstances around those texts back and forth?
Me texting to see if he was coming and him texting back saying something had come up or they weren't able to come.
Okay. And do you recall what number it was that he called and texted you from?
It looks like area code 917-744-7651.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. This witness is excused. Call your next witness. Thank you.
At this time, the state will call Heidi Schumacher.
Okay. Ma'am, if you come around, remain standing, put your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, face the clerk, please.
Do you swear to the testimony you give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you state your name, please?
Heidi Nicole Schumacher.
And, Ms. Schumacher, did you know Laura Ackerson, the victim in this matter?
Yes.
And, what was your relationship with her?
She was my best friend
When had you, met Laura Ackerson for the first time?
when I was 19.
And would that have been in, 2004, 2005?
2004.
And what were the circumstances where you first, met Laura Ackerson?
We met at Applebee's.
And were you both employed there at the time?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you continue to have a friendship kind of from that point forward?
Yes.
And were there periods of time in your friendship where kind of you were living in different areas?
Yes.
And did you continue to maintain contact with her during those times as well?
Yes, we did.
Do you recall an incident on April the 30th of 2007 when you had some contact with Laura on that day?
Yes.
And how do you specifically remember that day?
That was the day I met Grant Hayes.
And was that also Laura Ackerson's birthday?
Yes, it was.
And on that date in April the 30th of 2007, can you describe where you were and the contact that you had with Laura on that day?
We met at Sinelli's off Celebration in Six Forks, and she said she had a surprise for me. So I hadn't seen her in a while because I had been out of town training for a different job, and this was the first time I'd seen her in like 6 or 8 weeks. So we met there because it was her birthday. I bought her birthday present, and she said, "Hey, surprise, I got married." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Congratulations." And so we hugged in the parking lot, and I gave her a gift, and then she introduced me to Grant Hayes.
And she introduced Grant Hayes as being the person that she had married?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that you were best friends, and so were you surprised surprised when she gave you that news?
I was very surprised, yes.
Had you met Grant Hayes before that day?
No, I had seen him. I didn't know I had seen him, though.
And what do you mean by that?
We had gone to the Blue Martini before I had left for my training in Chicago, and he had happened to be playing at that time at the Blue Martini. I did not know that he was playing or that it was him or anything like that until later.
So was that information that Laura told you later, hey,
Yes, that's
you have
correct.
seen him before?
Yes.
With regard to Laura telling you that she had got married, did she tell you when that had happened?
She said it was that day on April 30th because it was both of their birthdays.
When we say both, being Grant Hayes' birthday as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Did she indicate to you where that marriage had taken place?
She informed me it was at the Raleigh Justice of the Peace.
From that point forward, I know you indicated you had been out of the state doing some training. Did you continue to have contact with Laura? Did you continue to see her after that?
After I got back?
Yes.
Yes.
And during that time, was she living with Grant Hayes at various locations?
At the beginning of their relationship, she was living off of New Hope Road in a complex off there.
And was she living there with Grant Hayes?
I was under my impression, yes.
And during the course of kind of time as it went by, did she move to different locations with Grant Hayes?
Yes, multiple locations.
Were they all here in the Raleigh area?
In their entire relationship?
No, just during this next year or two.
Yes.
At some point, did they move out of the Raleigh area?
Yes.
And what do you know about that?
I know they moved to the Virgin Islands separately and also to Kinston. Other than that, it was my understanding they were in the Raleigh area the rest of the time until Grant moved to New York.
Now, you indicated that that they moved to the Virgin Islands separately. What do you mean by that?
Grant went down before she did.
And before Laura actually went down to the Virgin Islands, was there some discussion about her leaving Grant?
Yes.
And was that something that you were involved with?
Yes.
And how were you involved in that discussion? Or
I was encouraging her to leave Grant.
and prior to that time, had you been aware that there were some issues in the relationship between Laura and Grant?
Yes.
And was that information that you received from Laura as well as things that you yourself saw?
Yes.
You indicated that you, at this point, had Laura already had Grant before?
Grant Forth, yes.
And so was he a baby at this point?
Yes, he was.
What happened with regard to the decision whether or not to leave Grant Hayes at that point?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
You said that there was some discussion with Laura and you were encouraging her to leave Grant Hayes.
Yes, you're asking for a reason?
No, I'm asking what happened about that? Did she in fact leave him at that point?
She was staying with my family in Wake Forest when he went to the Virgin Islands, and we had talked about her going to Michigan to stay with her dad, and we had actually gone so far as to make a plan. We were going to stay at my grandparents' house overnight, and we were going to go up there, but then Laura started to feel sick, and it had gone on for a couple of days that she'd been staying, so we went to Planned Parenthood, and she found out she was pregnant, 12 weeks, with Gentle.
So initially the plan had been for her to go and relocate to the Michigan area?
Yes, that's correct.
And you had already made plans with her about kind of that trip and making that happen?
Yes, that's correct.
How did her finding out that she was pregnant, and this would be with Gentle,
Yes.
how did that change anything?
She decided that she wanted to tell Grant about it and maybe give it another shot because they were having another child.
And was it shortly after that she left for the Virgin Islands?
Yes.
Do you know how long she was in the Virgin Islands?
I feel like it was about 8 months, somewhere around there.
And at some point did you become aware that she was the United States or
Yes.
to North Carolina. Where did she move back to?
They moved back to Kinston with his parents, or the rental house across the street or next door. I'm not sure. I never actually went there.
So, they moved back to the Kinston area. Was it your understanding that Grant, also moved back with Laura at that time?
Yes, it was my understanding they were living there together.
During that time, did you continue to maintain contact with Laura when she was back in the Kinston area?
Yes.
And I know you said that you didn't visit with her there in Kinston, but
No.
How would you communicate with her?
We would communicate via, text message, email, or phone conversation, or IM chat, or GChat.
And were you at that point living in the Raleigh area?
I was living in the Wake Forest area, yes.
At some point, did you become aware that Grant had left the Kinston area?
Yes.
And how did you come to that information?
Laura said that he was going to New York to get a record contract.
And did she remain in the Kinston area?
Yes, she still lived there. She came up and stayed with me for a little bit, but she was still living there, working for his mom.
I believe you mentioned earlier that his mother or his parents had a daycare center.
Yes, that's correct.
And did Laura work there in the daycare center?
Yes, that's correct.
You also mentioned, I believe, that there was a rental house that his parents owned.
Yes, that they rented.
And where was that located in relation to the daycare center?
It was either right across the street or next door.
At some point, did you become aware that Laura moved from Grant's parents' rental house to another apartment in the Kinston area?
That was later on.
Okay. What happened during the time that Laura was living there in the rental house that his parents owned?
Would you be more specific?
Did both of the children live there with her in the rental
Yes.
house? Okay. Did there come a time when you became aware that Grant, the fourth, the child, had gone to New York?
Yes.
And what did you know about that situation?
That was around the time Laura was thinking about leaving Grant for a second time. And Grant had said, I'm going to just come down and take little Grant for 3 days. He's got a diaper advertisement shoot, and he'll be back in 3 days. And I advised Laura not to let him take her son up to New York because she was never going to get him back, and she decided against it and let him take little Grant. And obviously, she did not get little Grant back.
And did she express to you any frustrations or
Yes.
concerns that she had about that situation?
Yes.
Did she take any action following that to try to get Grant back?
Yes. She filed a motion for custody.
I mean, Grant the fourth back, the child.
Yes, little Grant. She filed a motion or a custody motion.
And was that filed in Lenore County where she was living?
Yes, in Kinston area.
And at the point where she filed that paper in the Kinston County, Lenore County area, was Gentle still with her?
Yes.
And what happened with regard to the custody of those children?
Well, he filed a counter motion, an ex parte order against her, which removed Gentle from her custody immediately.
And what happened after that?
Laura decided to fight for her children because she loved them.
Did you have a discussion with her about that?
I did.
And what did you tell her?
I told her she'd have to choose right now if she wanted to fight for the rest of her life, because that's what she would be doing. This wasn't going to be easy. And she was just going to have to choose. Do you want to be a lioness or a lamb? And she said, I'm going to be a lioness, and I'm going to fight every day for my kids. And she did.
In terms of kind of the step that she took after she let you know that she was going to fight for her children, what was the next step? Were there further court proceedings?
Yes.
And were you involved in either attending or advising Laura with regard to the court proceedings?
Yes.
How are you involved in those?
I was a character witness for her.
And were you aware that there was an arrangement worked out whereby Laura would have the children on the weekends and Grant would have the children during the week?
Yes, it was my understanding it was a temporary arrangement.
And at that time, where was Grant living?
Raleigh.
Did you know that he had gotten married?
Yes, by then I did.
And how did you find out about that?
A picture that he had sent Laura via email of him and Amanda and little Grant in Vegas getting married.
And did that transpire during the time that he was still living in New York?
Yes, before the ex parte order had been filed.
You had testified earlier that Laura had told you way back in 2007 that she and Grant had gotten married.
Yes, that's correct.
What was her reaction when she got a photograph of Grant and Amanda getting married in Las Vegas?
It was my understanding that that's when she found out she was never really married to Grant Hayes.
And what do you mean by that?
He had told her when he sent her the picture that they were never married because he never signed the marriage certificate.
And so the time that you knew Laura from 2007 until, and this would have been in 2010. Does
Yes.
that sound right? During that time, did she believe, according to what she told you, that she was married to Grant Hayes?
From what I saw, yes.
You indicated that Grant had moved to Raleigh after he married Amanda. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And I asked you about the proceeding. Did you actually attend the court hearing where it was established about Laura having the boys on the weekend and Grant having them up during the week?
Yes, it was a mediation.
And you testified you understood that to be a temporary arrangement?
Yes.
And were there court proceedings that were ongoing after that?
Yes, that's correct. August 15th, the 2011.
And what was the significance of that date?
That would have been the date that the actual hearing was for the custody arrangement.
And prior to that, were you aware that there was a psych evaluation that had been ordered by the court?
Yes.
And did you know that Ginger Calloway had been the court-appointed psychologist that had been directed to basically perform that evaluation?
Yes.
And did you participate yourself anyway in that evaluation?
Yes.
And what was your involvement or participation?
As a character witness, I spoke to Ginger Calloway. I also met with her when Laura brought the boys for their individual sessions. I also forwarded her emails and response statements to a contempt motion, so she had that on file.
And was that, when you say email and responses to a contempt motion, was that information that you had prepared in your role as a witness in those hearings?
Yes, that I thought was relevant to the case.
And you shared that with Dr. Calloway?
Yes, I did.
Did that process, that being the evaluation, did that take some period of time to actually complete?
Yes, a month.
And were you aware when the evaluation was completed and the results had been sent?
I was notified by Laura that she had received the results. I never actually saw the results, though.
Okay. And what was Laura's reaction when she received the results?
She was excited. She was happy about the results.
And did she tell you why?
No, just that she thought she was either going to get full custody or at least split custody.
And do you recall how long before her death that she received those results?
Honestly, I can't recall the exact, I would say maybe a month, or possibly 2 months. It was close to the time of her death, yes.
Were you aware, kind of during the pendency of the child custody matter, that Laura was keeping detailed records of her interactions with the boys and with Grant and Amanda?
Yes.
And what did you know about that?
That started in 2010 when the custody battle originally began.
And what did you know about the documentation or the notes that she was keeping?
I advised her to I advised her to go get a tape recorder and record everything that that happened between she and Grant and the boys, just to make sure that she had some kind of record. I advised her to go ahead and keep a logbook of everything, just from her daily time with the boys to, what they ate or sleep patterns, if anything eventful happened, when she talked to Grant, or anything related to the case.
And why did you tell her to do that?
Because I was in my master's program for criminal justice and I thought it was a good idea.
And to your knowledge, did she do those things?
Yes.
Were you aware of the exchanges that would take place at the Sheetz gas station in Wilson with regard to the kids?
Yes.
Did you yourself ever go with Laura for any of those exchanges?
Not to the Sheetz gas station, no.
Was there any other locations where those exchanges would take place?
The first exchange was at the actual courthouse in Kinston after the mediation.
And you were present at that?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you have an opportunity to be around Laura and Grant in general?
Yes.
And how often did that happen?
After the mediation,
Yes.
I was around them maybe twice or 3 times after that day.
Did Laura ever express to you any concerns that she had for her safety?
Yes.
And what concerns did she express to you?
And 2 months or so before her death, she called me and she was a little bit upset. And she said, Heidi, just if anything happens to me, if I commit suicide, if I go missing, if I get into a car accident, know that Grant did it.
And did you have any concerns for your safety as Laura's friend related to the events that were going on?
Years prior to that, yes, Laura and I had both been threatened by Grant.
How did you find out that Laura was missing?
I found out on Monday, the 18th of July, 2011, from Mike Rivera and Siobhan Mathis.
And who's Mike Rivera?
That was a previous employer of Laura's.
And Siobhan Mathis,
Was her partner, a business partner at the time of her disappearance.
and had you known Siobhan prior to that time?
I had never met her, but I had known of her.
And was that through Laura?
Yes.
And on the 18th, that Monday, did Siobhan Mathis actually make contact with you?
Yes.
And did she call you?
Yes, I was the emergency contact that Mike Rivera had on file as her previous employer, as Laura's previous employer.
And so Mike and Siobhan both contacted?
Yes.
You had indicated that Laura, you had advised Laura to take some precautions in terms of recording interactions with the recorder and actually taking notes and keeping a log or a journal.
Yes, that's correct.
Did you also have some discussion with her regarding emails and documenting emails?
Yes.
Can you describe that for the jury?
The emails, we had set up secret email addresses because she had suspected that Grant had hacked into her email address. And she didn't want that to happen. She didn't want these emails that he was sending her, these either bad-mouthing emails or just any emails that might pertain to the case, deleted from her email address. So she would forward them to me in groups that she just put everything together and would forward them to me. And I would forward them then to a separate account so that he couldn't get into that.
And once you had received word from Mike and Siobhan that Laura was missing, what steps did you take at that point?
Immediately following, I was in shock. I dropped to my knees and began bawling, and then I sat basically in the same spot for 12 hours because I knew that she was dead. And after that, I went down to Wilson, to the gas station they met at, just to see if there might be any documentation that they had met there on Friday like they were supposed to. And the manager had told me, I did not actually view the footage, but the manager told me that only the male and the two boys had shown up there on that Friday. And I then took that information, passed that along, but I also went down to Kinston and met with the Detective Courtney in Kinston that day after I found out, which would be the 19th, Tuesday, and informed him that I believed that Laura had been murdered. And I passed on any information I deemed relevant at the time, including some emails.
And did you also speak with Raleigh detectives with regard to any information that you had to pass on?
Yes, that was after my Kinston trip. I came back into Raleigh and interviewed with Detective Falk.
And you were aware at that point that the investigation had been turned over to the Raleigh Police Department?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you know that Laura was planning to come to the Raleigh area on the 13th?
No.
Did she normally contact you every time she came to Raleigh?
Normally, pretty consistently, yes.
And would you all, on occasion, get together when she was in the area?
Yes.
When had you last spoken to Laura?
I spoke to her on the 13th.
And what was that a telephone call or email?
No, that was an email.
And what was the nature of your contact with her on the 13th?
She was just checking to make sure I was going to be there on the 15th of August for court at 9 a.m. As a character witness, I informed her that I had already taken off work and that yes, I would definitely be there, and she asked me about Charlotte because I was going to go down to Charlotte. And she asked me to pick up like magazines for her and stuff because she was thinking about pitching some advertisement ideas for like big city magazines. And let's see, what else? I mean, we just basically told each other that we loved each other, and that's it.
And so she, the first part of what you said was that she was checking to make sure that you were available and ready to testify in the court proceeding on August the 15th?
Yes.
And you had told her that you were and that you'd already taken off work?
Yes, that's correct.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Mr. Schumacher, I'm handing you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit Number 5, and ask if you'll just take a minute and look at that. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 5?
Yes.
And what is State's Exhibit Number 5?
It's a set of emails from Laura and I, or between us.
And does that reflect kind of a thread or a kind of a continuing conversation over several days?
Yes.
And you recognize that to be, when
Began on July 10th, 2011 at 11:56 p.m.
And when did it end?
Wednesday, July 13th, 2011 at 1:27 a.m.
And does that appear to be exactly as you recall the conversation between you and Laura beginning on July the 10th and ending on July the 13th of
Yes.
2011?
That's correct.
At this time, the state would move to introduce into evidence State's Exhibit number 5.
That'll be received.
With regard to that response, can you start on, or that exhibit, can you start on July the 10th and describe for the jury and refer to that and tell us how that conversation began and who said what?
Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
This was to me from Laura. Hey lady, just wanted to make sure I got this to you in enough time. I may have already told you, I can't remember. Next court date is August 15th at 9 a.m. I definitely need you. Love you, lady. Laura Ackerson. And then her phone number. And then the next one is my response back to her. I already took off for it, lady, so I will be there. I love you, chick. The following one is back from Laura to me. Awesome. Love you too. I'm so ready. And Laura again to me. Hey, lady, what's the word on you with Charlotte? And I was responding, hey, lady, I'm headed down this weekend to look for jobs. So she replied to me, awesome. Can you pick up any magazines you see around? I'm talking whatever you see at the library, shopping, wherever. I'm thinking about pitching a mag in a big city and want to see what they have out there already. Checking websites can only go so far. I'm so happy for you. Can't wait till August. Dude, it's just pure frustration. Wondering, do you think I should call in his ex-wife? I need to round up a few witnesses. Then I responded, hey girl, I'm so tired right now and I'm going to sleep, but yes, I think you should get in touch with his ex-wife. Yay for Charlotte. I love you, Chica, and I will be there for the court date. Love you, girl. Good night.
And as you've indicated, that final, your final response to Laura was at 1:27 in the morning.
Yes, that's correct, on the 13th of July.
And is that the last contact you ever had with Laura?
Yes.
You had testified earlier, Ms. Schumacher, that Laura indicated when you asked her, do you want to be the lioness or the lamb, that she responded that she wanted to be the lioness and fight for her children.
Yes.
Did that waver during the time that you knew her up until July the 13th of 2011?
Never.
Was she doing things to prepare for those children coming to live with her?
Yes.
And what kind of things was she doing?
And she had a wonderful home set up for them. She even had pictures of her and Grant together, Grant Sr. together in their bedroom so that the kids would always feel loved by both their parents. She would go to this toy rental place, so every time they came to visit her, they would have new toys to play with.
And during the time that this custody battle was going on, did you ever meet Amanda Hayes yourself?
Yes.
And under what circumstances?
The first time I met her was at the mediation.
And did you have any real contact with her?
Just polite conversation.
I may have just one minute.
All right.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions at this time.
Mr. Gasson, do you have questions?
Yes, thank you, good afternoon, Ms. Schumacher.
Yes, that's correct.
Correct?
Schumacher.
You talked a lot about Grant. I seem to recall in some previous testimony, something that you talked about, that I didn't hear you talk about today, was involved an incident, and correct me if I'm confused you with someone else, but were you involved in an incident in which it
Yes. That was when they were living off Mitchell Mill Road in Raleigh, right before little Grant was born. Laura and I were on the phone, and we were having a conversation, and Grant started yelling at her in the background to get off the phone with me because I was a bad influence on her, and that she was forbidden from talking to me again. And I said, Laura, don't you dare hang up. And she goes, I have to, and she hung up. And so I, thinking something was wrong, got in my car and drove over there. And it took about 25 minutes to get there from where I lived in Wake Forest. And I got there, I pulled into the driveway as Grant was pulling out down the street as a passenger in a black car. And I walked up to the door, and Laura answered, and her nose was bleeding, and she had what was started as a black eye. And she was crying and just completely distraught, saying that she didn't want to press any charges, everything was going to be okay. And I tried to convince her to go to the hospital or the police, and she denied wanting to go. And I stayed there for about an hour and a half, I guess, until she was calm. And I was trying to get her to go to the hospital at least, maybe even not the police, but at least to go get checked out, since she was very pregnant at the time. And she declined to go and get checked out, saying, oh, it's not going to happen again. We'll get through this. It'll be okay.
Did I hear you also say that Grant had indicated that he didn't want you to be around her anymore?
Yes, that's correct.
Was that what you perceived to be a pattern with Grant, his attempt to isolate Laura
Objection.
from her friends and her family?
Overall, you may answer.
Yeah, I apologize. Yes, that was an attempt to isolate her.
And did you also perceive that he was attempting to isolate her not only from you, but from her other friends?
Yes,
I'm hearing you describe Grant as a very dangerous person,
yes,
a very evil person.
yes,
He was someone who also was very manipulative, wasn't
yes,
he? He was very controlling, wasn't
extremely.
he? He was very deceptive, wasn't he?
Yes,
He even led Laura to believe that he had married her when he really hadn't.
yes, that's correct.
Can you give me some other instances where you're aware of Grant's level of Grant's deception?
His deception or his control?
But whichever.
I can give you even little examples of his control being when Laura met Grant, she was this bubbly, fun blonde who just wore whatever clothes she wanted and did, was just happy all the time. And before their custody battle, she had changed dramatically into a person that had the same color hair as Grant's ex-wife because he made her dye her hair. She wore only neutral tones and black colors because that is what he wanted her to wear. He controlled every aspect of her life down to who she spoke to on the phone, if she was allowed to go meet someone, where she drove, where she went shopping. That is the type of person that Grant was to Laura.
In fact, you were so concerned, you went and got a concealed weapon for yourself.
Yes, that's correct.
Tell me why you did that.
Laura and I had been hanging out, I guess, in secret, and he had come out, and he had, I don't know exactly what prompted his threats that time, but he threatened to kill both Laura and I took his threat seriously and went out and got my license, my concealed carry license and a gun, make sure I could protect myself.
In fact, Laura had told you, either person in an email, you tell me which, that if anything ever happened to her, that to go to the police because Grant had killed her.
She told me specifically on the phone, because she was very upset, that if she committed suicide, if she was missing, if she had gotten into a car accident, then know that it was Grant, that he did it.
You were the one that suggested that she record every conversation that she had with you,
That's correct.
and that was because you didn't trust him, did you?
Every word out of his mouth that I had ever heard was a lie. So that's correct. I did not trust him.
You were prepared to testify for Laura at the custody hearing?
Yes.
That was scheduled for August 15th.
Yes.
And you were aware that the child custody evaluation was being performed by Dr. Caldwell?
Yes,
And you participated in that evaluation?
I did.
Did you help Laura to prepare the parenting history report?
She did the parenting history report by herself.
Did you review it?
Yes,
And would you recognize it if you were to see it now?
probably.
And approach with it?
Okay.
It's lengthy, just take your time and go through it as you feel necessary.
Well, for what purpose? You're going to ask her if that's what she saw?
I'm going to ask her a question. That's my intention.
All right. Look at it, and we'll deal with what your questions are.
I've
No,
seen
not
it.
today, but previously.
Yes.
Okay.
Exhibit, Defendant's Exhibit 24A,
Okay.
which is a copy of what you are looking at now. It has highlighted portions in order that I can easily direct your
Okay.
attention to the parts that I want to go through. So, Ms. Schumacher, would you look at on the first page of that parenting history report at the question number 6?
Let me call you. Let me ask y'all to step up here for a minute. All right, thank you. I'm sorry, go to your question.
Question number 6.
Yes.
I'll read the question, you begin.
Okay.
Indicate any major adult-oriented concern.
Threaten.
Overall.
Threaten to mistreat me, emotionally mistreat me, sexually mistreat me, physically mistreat me, other, used alcohol to excess, used drugs to excess, use or create conflicts in an abusive way, have a long-term emotional or physical impairment, withhold contact or access to children.
We'll go to page 2. And we're still on question 6. She wrote a great deal more in answering question number 6. If you will go to the first paragraph that I have highlighted and read it.
Grant the third had very harsh views on the value of women and sex. He used sex as a tool to punish and mold my behavior instead of as a way to show affection and love. If he continues to behave like this, I think it will cause chaos in any relationship he is in. Also, the belief system that Grant III holds regarding women will ultimately be passed on to Grant IV and Gentle. I think this will give them lowered self-esteem and chaos in their adult relationships. Grant III told me that he was molested as a child, that he has had sex with over 200 women. He also told me that he has had sex with his aunt. He showed no disturbance over this. This disturbs me. I don't want our children to think that this behavior is acceptable. Grant III associates regularly with pimps, drug dealers, drug abusers, and murderers. He brings these people into his home regularly. Grant III appears to feel very strongly that the U.S. is run by aliens and that a government collapse is imminent. He apparently believes that there will be either a spaceship or an underground system of tunnels that will be reserved for only the very rich, famous, necessary individuals to live in while Armageddon happens on Earth. He is basing these fears and theories on information he found on YouTube, and from what I understand, things his dad told him when he was a child. I can provide a snapshot of his Facebook account showing his self-stated religious views to be aliens and various text messages that support this. Grant III often creates an emergency, in quotations, situation to manipulate people into doing what he wants. Grant III is very manipulative and will pretend things happened that didn't, and that things didn't happen that did. For instance, he would pretend that I was yelling at him when I was on the phone with him while he was in front of Amanda in order to appear attacked, in quotations, by me. I have witnessed Grant III behave like a bully on several occasions. On one occasion, he held a knife on a fellow musician during a gig at Jack Astor's because the musician used the word fuck, in quotations, while speaking to Grant III about his lack of timeliness on arriving to the gig. I have witnessed Grant III lie nearly every day about everything from our marital status to his education level to what he ate for dinner the night before to what record company is calling him and just about everything in between. Grant III has taken advantage of the court system by lying to obtain an ex parte order and has completely disregarded the best interests of our children by doing so. During our relationship, Grant III requested that I be a polygamist with him. When I refused, he went outside our relationship instead. I think this request will be repeated in his future relationships and will most likely cause a problem. Grant III doesn't appear to be capable of a stable long-term relationship. He sees something that would suit his purposes, goes for it, regardless of prior commitments. To quote Grant III, in quotations, "Too many options can kill a man," end quotation. I have a handwritten list of goals outlining a desired additional partner's attributes in Grant's handwriting for your review if necessary. Grant III asked me to marry him after knowing me only 3 weeks. He married his first wife within weeks. Grant III also asked Kristen, a girlfriend he had during our relationship, specifically during the second trimester of my first pregnancy until March of 2009, to marry him and run away with him. I was in the room while he was talking with her on the phone and overheard the conversation. He has now married Amanda after only knowing her for a few months. I think that these quick attachments suggest that he has a very shallow ability to connect and attach to others. To support this, there is a marriage certificate from his first wife stating that they were married in April and an email showing that Grant III and Amanda had a wedding ceremony in Vegas in April. Grant III blacks out, in quotation, sometimes, and acts odd and violent. He says he has no recollection of this. I don't know whether the times I experienced this with him were drug-induced or not. I don't remember the dialogue exactly, but I remember feeling... I am. Okay. I don't remember the dialogue exactly, but I remember feeling as though I would be in serious danger if I didn't take preventative measures. I have never hid knives from anyone in my life prior to this point, or felt like I was in danger quite like this. When Grant III finally fell into an extremely restless sleep, he stayed asleep for many hours beyond his norm, twitching and acting as though he were having a constant nightmare. This was prior to us getting pregnant with either child. He wrote his MySpace biography that night, which I would like you to review. It's strange even for him. After penning his autobiography, he proceeded to shoot me repeatedly with an air pump BB gun. It didn't do any damage to my skin, but it was painful. It was disturbing because not only should you not shoot your significant other, but I asked him to stop and he just stared at me and kept shooting. His eyes were like the eyes of a hawk, and again seemed just empty. I held up a towel in front of me to block the BBs in order to get out of the room. A saxophonist, Clay King, was present. I'm not sure what he saw or heard. These, quote, episodes, unquote, of, quote, lost time, end quote, are obviously a very dangerous thing for anyone who has to be around him. For anyone who is dependent on him, it's extremely scary. This, I think, could be very harmful to our children's safety. I think Grant III is delusional. At one point, he told me that he was a, quote, time traveler, end quote. He has told me that beings from other planets follow him around the world. He has told me that those same beings run the United States. I allowed myself to be alienated from my friends and family. Everyone I knew was either, quote, really dumb, end quote, quote, too fat, end quote, or not good enough to be around us, according to Grant III. I think this attitude towards a romantic relationship, that your lover is yours, is unhealthy and a very bad example for two young men. Grant III's attitude will most likely lead to another ended relationship and more opportunity for issues to manifest in our children. Grant III is constantly a critic. Grant III encouraged me to talk to his fans, about our sex life and to brag about his penis size, something I would never even dream of bringing up with his fans. Grant III made it clear to me that he thought that I was trash because I was a white girl who would enter into a relationship with him. It was as if no matter what I did, I was always wrong or trashy or incompetent or not good enough. He told me that he had sex with Kristen because she had a large butt. After a very poor decision on my part, Grant III physically assaulted me. Our two roommates were home, Frankie Goodrich and Roxy Bond. They may be necessary to contact to confirm that this event actually happened, although it is possible that they would lie for Grant III. Oh. Are you talking about the sentence that begins with now? Okay. After getting to know him these last few years, Grant III's character is crystal clear to me. Drawing on my experiences with Grant III, I think he married Amanda for several reasons that I don't believe she's aware of yet. I believe that Grant III convinced Amanda that I am crazy and that he urgently needs her help saving the children from me. Telling her these things would prompt her to marry him very quickly and to stand behind him while he boldly lies to the court. Now, because they're married, Grant III has the ability to take Amanda to court for alimony when they divorce. Amanda has a decent amount of money, says Grant III, which of course benefits him. Even if a divorce is far off, Amanda is funding Grant's career at this time, a goal he has been trying to fulfill since before I met him. Just before they were married, Grant III threatened me over the phone, informing me that he would have full access to Amanda's money soon. Quote, "Whose money do you think it is?" End quote. He yelled to me when I told him that I wasn't afraid of him anymore and that I would be fighting him in court for our children regardless of my financial situation. Over the course of that conversation, he made it clear that I would lose our court case and he would win because in the court system, the person with the most money wins. Another touch point is when Grant III said, quote, "I should just pimp her. Nah, I won't," end quote, in regard to Amanda and Kenny Chesney. Grant III said that Kenny had a crush on Amanda while they were all three in the Virgin Islands, and I'm not quoting Grant III on this part. This is the implication of a conversation as I remember it, that if Kenny was in Amanda's pocket and Amanda was in Grant III's pocket, Grant III was as good as famous. Another conversation that boldly stated that Grant III was manipulating everything around him is this. Grant III has complained to me about Amanda's, quote, "saggy breasts," end quote, on an occasion where he was trying to convince me that their whole relationship was just for the betterment of our family's financial situation. On his Facebook page, he talks about Amanda to his friends, quote, "I'm marrying this actress from the Stepford Wives," end quote, in a regard that states clearly that his interests in her are other than her being the woman of his dreams. To summarize, Grant III uses people and then trashes them. I can't see Grant III and Amanda's relationship lasting very long, not because I'm a bitter ex, but because Grant III uses people for what he can and then moves on. I have seen firsthand how his partners manifest in our relationship, and his and Kristen's relationship, as well as his interaction with his friends.
The next page is question number 7. Indicate below any major children-related concerns that you have or that you have had or that you now have about the parent. Answer by completing this statement. The other parent did or may.
Excuse me, sorry. Laura marked, emotionally mistreat or neglect the children, physically mistreat or neglect the children, other list, choose to be absent from the children for extended periods, have an impaired emotional bond with the children, be inadequate or incompetent to care for the children.
First sentence of the second paragraph below that.
Grant III has tried to train Grant IV to call me Laura, quotes, instead of mommy, quotes, but stopped abruptly. Grant III may use the children to further his career. He has told many people that his children are his, quote, 401k, end quote, or, quote, retirement plan, end quote. Grant III seems to not be able to be alone. I left Grant III with Grant IV briefly from time to time, and there were always other people at our house when I returned. Or Grant III was at an outdoor bar in town, allowing several strangers to hold Grant IV. The number of people Grant IV has been held by that he doesn't even know numbers well into the 200s or more. Grant III will use the children as a bargaining chip in social relationships. He has offered, quote, godfather, quote, status to 2 convicted felons, Paul Hutchins and Samir Sangjar. One instance was to solidify a business relationship. At one point, Grant III was watching a movie with a very realistic rape scene. Grant IV was awake and was about a year old at this time. Grant III thought it was perfectly fine to expose our child to this violence, regardless of my opinion. This type of behavior has been repeated several times with rape scenes, murder scenes, sex scenes, etc. Grant III may emotionally abuse our children. Grant III views the world as a, quote, large chessboard and people are energy that is to be manipulated, end quote. Grant III has shown behaviors that suggest that he will use our children and anyone else to his benefit whenever he has an opportunity. Grant III may expose our children at an early age to violent and sexual things that may negatively affect their emotional development. Grant III has tried to coerce me into letting him take Grant IV to Rome and to China. I believe that he would take our children out of the country and not come back if he feels he can get away with it. Yes. Grant III invites anyone into his home that will come, regardless of whether it's a good idea or not at the all the time. This is chaotic, unsafe, and nerve-wracking for the children, as constant entertainment throws off their routines. Also, allowing just anyone in your home, as Grant III does, is unsafe. Grant III has threatened to take the children from me and turn me into a, quote, bag lady, end quote, on several occasions. I think this attitude toward me would hurt our children's self-esteem and would create a negative attitude toward women that could last long into adulthood. Example 2. We went to a dinner in the fall of 2008. We sat outside a table with 8 other people. Within the first 30 minutes, Grant III disappeared into the restaurant and stayed gone for a long time. One of the people at the table went inside and came back out and sat down next to me. He told me that, quote, told me that I, quote, should leave Grant III and get your kids immunized. You will be fine, don't worry, end quote. I said nothing to spur this conversation. I later found out that Grant III was in the bathroom snorting cocaine and selling it while I was sitting outside with our child and Grant III's friends. Grant III is an avid believer that immunizations cause autism and that the chances of an African American boy getting the disorder is much greater than the rest of the population, or so he repeatedly told me to keep me from getting the kids immunized. While we were living in the Virgin Islands, Grant III would almost always come home drunk after a gig and then smoke marijuana. He was incapable of caring for the children in this state and left all of the child care and household duties to me except for taking out the trash. Then he would sleep till late in the afternoon and get up in time to sometimes go to the grocery store, eat dinner, and then go to work. Grant III told me in February of 2010 that he wanted to have 50 children by women of different races so that he could start an empire. He said it was the, quote, old way of building a business, end quote, referring to the Bible. He said that it would probably take him until he was 70 years old to accomplish. His whole family has heard about his, quote, scheme, end quote. He has told me about a daughter that he and Amanda planned to have, so I'm betting he wasn't kidding. Grant III has used Grant IV as, to quote Grant III, quote, social currency, end quote, passing Grant IV around the table on several occasions while at Woody's in Cruz Bay in St. John, Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, to be held by any pretty woman that was nearby. He was searching for his investor by fishing with our children, our kids. He has told me that he was looking for someone who would finance his lifestyle without him having to work, or, in his words, an, quote, investor, end quote, who could support his lifestyle.
The next question is number 8. Summarize the major aspects of the current situation.
The current situation is mostly stable but unacceptable. Grant III cares about his career and his world takeover plans ahead of his children's well-being. I know this sounds crazy, but ask some of his family for verification of the 50 kids by women of different races goal. Grant III's dad told me about this before Grant III finally did. He has used our children to get Amanda to marry him and is trying to kick me out of my boys' lives. He uses power plays repeatedly to try to accomplish this, and by creating situations where I am either having to break a court order or upset people closest to my children. I love Grant IV and Gentle and just want to see them happy. I want to see them grow up to be productive, healthy men. I am wholeheartedly convinced that Grant III is a sociopath with zero emotional depth, who finds joy in manipulating people's emotions for his own gain. Grant IV seems much more aggressive on Fridays than any other day that I see him. Gentle has come home from Grant III's house with large bruises on several occasions. He cares about keeping and growing his assets, Gentle and Grant IV, into a retirement plan for himself. Amanda buys into his facade right now, but Grant III won't keep it up. Once it's no longer necessary, he will start sleeping with whoever else can help him with his career goals. My boys need to be home with me, where they have been and where they belong. Laura marked, threaten to physically mistreat the children, emotionally mistreat or neglect the children, sexually mistreat the children, physically mistreat the children, be adequate, but he/she is a better parent for the children, be inadequate or incompetent to care for the children, emotionally mistreat him/her, sexually mistreat him/her, threaten to mistreat him/her, physically mistreat him/her. I checked every box because Grant III will say anything to anyone at any time to get what he wants. I can't predict what he will say. Yes. His work history is as a Southern rock musician who plays in bars from California to North Carolina, Denver to Turks and Caicos, St. John to New York City. His regular associates are the people that you find in bars who don't have jobs, other musicians, drug dealers, drug addicts, and gold-digging women. According to Grant III, part of his job is to make women want to have sex with him and then pass them off to the men that tag along with him. He explained that this is why people treat him like a celebrity and pay for everything from limos to dinners to clothing. I don't think this is a good model for two young boys, regardless of the dividends. Grant III is an alcoholic, a drug addict, chain smokes, and may have a personality disorder. This is an absolute concern. Grant III's consistent behavior can be described as coercive, intimidating, manipulative, and hostile. I have text messages documenting Grant III's manipulative nature by any means necessary, and a voicemail that he left trying to intimidate me into giving him all of Gentle's property after the ex parte order was served. In March, I think, of 2010, I went to Dr. Joanna at East Coast Psychiatrics in Kinston, North Carolina. I was looking for an answer to Grant III's behavior and wanted to see if someone could put a name on it. At this time, Grant III was sleeping with Amanda, still known to me as his investor, and he wanted me to behave like his mistress. I was having a hard time deciding whether I should accept this behavior because at the root of it, he said he was doing this to benefit our children and our family. Yes.
My concerns or allegations about your use of alcohol or that of the other parent be raised as part of this evaluation. Answer yes. Did you read the first two sentences?
Grant III has been a heavy alcoholic since before I met him. He always blamed me for his alcohol use.
Next page, question number 45. Describe the use of all non-legal drugs by the other parent in the past year. First paragraph.
Grant III would smoke marijuana on a nightly basis while we were in St. John to level out the alcohol. He snorted cocaine on at least 2 occasions while in St. John that I knew about. That's all that I am positively certain of, but I'm sure he did more.
Number 46 reads, my concern or allegations about your use of your use of legal or non-legal drugs or that of the other parent be raised as a part of this evaluation. Answer yes. Did you read that part?
Because Grant III has been regularly partaking in drugs over the past 12 years of his life, and I believe he will continue to after our court case is over, I request that we do any testing possible. I also request that there be a system for following up these tests after the court date is over.
Number 47, has there been any contact with any professional or agency that was related to emotional or behavioral difficulties, personality problems, mental illness, anger or violence, drug use, alcohol use, counseling, arrest, or incarceration by you? Answer yes. Did you read that part?
I called a company called, quote, SAFE, end quote, on 2 or more occasions to discuss the situation with Grant III. They are a shelter for abused women and children. I contacted them in February of 2009 and February of 2010. I wanted to see if what I was experiencing was typical of an abusive relationship and if there were any options that I could use.
This question requests a brief history of your relationship with the other parent. Go down to the bottom of the page, November 2008.
November 2008. Grant III told me we needed to have money now for rent, as all of our money was now gone. I used the internet to get money he said we needed. I told Grant III about it, assuming he would be pleased. He beat me up and threw me out of our apartment without Grant IV. Roxy and Frankie were present in their bedroom.
February 2009.
February 2009. Grant III's parents and sister had an, quote, intervention with me, end quote. They told me Grant III had a crazy world takeover plan. They told me that he wants 50 kids by women of different races so that he can start his empire. Grant III's dad told me that Grant III was the type of man that would, quote, would pimp you if he needed to, end quote. Grant III did show this type of behavior while I was going out at night with him. Before I became pregnant with Grant the Fourth, he would always have a, quote, party favor, end quote, or a woman who would come over to keep the host of the party, quote, company, end quote. It didn't really click with me that this is what was going on until Grant the Third's dad said this. February 2009. He gave me Emily's number and I called her. She told me to, quote, run, end quote, from Grant III. I left Grant III's parents' house and went to my friend Heidi's parents' house for the next couple of weeks. Grant III's sister Tina also told me that I should, quote, run, end quote, from Grant III with my children, with several suggestions. Tina took me to the magistrate in Kinston, North Carolina, to file charges on Grant III for the assault. I never followed through with the charges because I thought that if I did, our family would never be able to recover from it. Wow, how time and a lack of being manipulated clears up a naive perspective. February 2009, I called SAFE to see what I could do. March 2009, Grant III toured in Raleigh, NC, came back with ex-con Jerry. He returned to drugs and drinking regularly after this. Things basically went back to, quote, normal, end quote. November 2009, Grant III met Amanda. He told me about her over the phone. He said that she was paying him in meals and laundry for guitar lessons. He said that he would be able to partner with her as a teacher and her as an investor in him, so he went back. Shortly after this, Grant III moved in with Amanda in St. John, U.S. Virgin Islands, still as an investor to my knowledge. Grant III told me over the phone of his plans to take advantage of Amanda's interest in him. He told me about his strategy. Amanda was generous as long as she felt she wasn't being taken advantage of. Because of this, he said he would eat ramen noodles very often instead of eating takeout with Amanda and Shay in order to come off in a humble manner. He said he was doing it intentionally to win her trust. He told me when she started talking about using an IUD and said that he thought she wanted to have sex with him. I knew what he was doing and what I was allowing was so wrong, but I couldn't walk away from him because he has always said that the kids would be, quote, abused, end quote, if I left him. He always told me that any man that married me after him would be an abusive man. He was always, quote, feeding, quote, end quote, me full of things like this throughout the entire time I have known him after our move to Atlanta. Grant III used my computer while he was in my home and got into my email. He had all of my emails forwarded to himself. I didn't catch this until June 2010. Grant III sent me an email showing pictures of his wedding to Amanda, his Vegas wedding to Amanda. Grant IV had been taken to Las Vegas without my knowledge. Grant III allowed the car that I was driving to be repossessed. It was in only his name. He is friends with Basil, the owner of the car dealership he had bought it from. And he had asked Basil to keep his things for him while I was living with his parents. Okay, the problem, lack of common values in general. It became serious when I realized that I was trapped. I had gotten rid of everything I owned. Grant III now owned our car, and Grant III and I had spent all of my savings and then some. After it was gone, the, quote, real Grant, end quote, came out. He started openly snorting coke and telling me about kissing other women instead of being the doting Prince Charming he had been previously. Grant III thinks it's okay to sleep with people to manipulate them into doing what he wants and encouraged that behavior from me. I didn't think that was acceptable. Yes. My understanding of the problem. Grant III has a larger-than-life perspective. He thinks he should have servants and that he should have the best of everything at all times. He is willing to do anything to make sure this happens. I contributed how? I didn't fully believe that he really thought this behavior was okay. I was so shocked that I thought he wasn't serious. When he asked me if I would consider being a, quote, bottom bitch, end quote, and help him pick up strippers to run through Vegas, I thought he was testing me to see how morally sound I was. I told him not a chance, and he never brought it up again. That part's not highlighted. Would you like me to read it anyway? No, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes. I previously read that one. Yes.
How much more of that are you looking at, Mr. Gass? How much more is it? We're going to take an afternoon break in a minute. What does close mean to you? I mean, it's 10 after 4. I mean, you know, if we don't stop soon, we won't have a break. Why don't we take about, I'm going to take about a 10-minute break, folks. Just, I want to check the weather, if y'all don't mind. Let's take about a 10-minute break. Don't discuss the case among yourselves. Don't discuss it with anybody else. Don't discuss it with you. Keep an open mind. Don't form or express any opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant or